Happening now, high-stakes talks with Iran. New photos this morning showing President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner meeting with Oman's foreign minister. That's ahead of these talks with Iran. Incredibly rare negotiations with high-level Iranian officials, the first at all since the U.S. bombed nuclear sites. President Trump has sent what he calls an armada to the region, initially in response to Iran's deadly crackdown on protesters. But the demands have morphed now to include demands about Iran's nuclear programs and missile capabilities. Let's get right to CNN's Elena Trine at the White House for the latest on, as I said, these very unusual talks.
Yes, very unusual indeed, particularly after a lot of the, animosity that we've seen shared between, of course, the United States and Iran during the president's second term. A reminder of the little trust that they have after the United States had aided Israel in bombing some of Iran's nuclear sites last summer. But look, I think a key question today is how they are going to set the groundwork for what is actually going to be the main points of these talks. Obviously, they are in these meetings now. But what we have heard from the U.S. side, from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is that they do want this to focus on Iran's nuclear program, on their ballistic missile program. But also they want to talk about what Rubio essentially said was the support of terrorist organizations in the region, essentially referring to some of Iran's proxies, but also the crackdown we've seen in this year, in the last month or so, of anti-regime protesters in the country, something, of course, we've seen the president use very strong rhetoric to threaten Iran with. Now, as for the Iranians, they have said they really want to have these talks limited to the topic of the nuclear program and having those negotiations. They also said they want to discuss some level of trying to ease sanctions on the country. But again, I think it's important to remind you of the little trust that they have. We actually did hear from the Iranian foreign minister earlier in a statement, Abbas Araghchi. He was saying, quote, Iran enters diplomacy with open eyes and a steady memory of the past year. Again, clearly referring to that 12-day war last summer with the U.S. involvement there. Now, all of this comes, John, against the backdrop of a massive U.S. military buildup in the region, something that I know that this White House and the Trump administration is hoping will serve as leverage, significant leverage in these talks. The president, for his part, has also had very harsh language about what the stakes are here. And he said in an interview with NBC News earlier this week that the supreme leader of Iran should be, quote, very worried. So we'll have to see where these lead. I do know from my conversations with White House officials that the president does want diplomacy first, but of course he is still leveling that threat of potential military action depending on how all of these negotiations go.
Elena Trine at the White House. Elena, thank you very much. All right, the closest NFL MVP vote in more than 20 years, and they picked the wrong person. Plus, the crown dropped during the heist at the Louvre. We're getting a first look at the damage. Who would wear that crown, seriously, anywhere? You wouldn't be caught dead wearing that.